We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Jurors are being seated in Donald Trump's criminal trial in New York City. But what does that mean? What does it mean for Donald Trump? And what kind of jurors are each side of the argument looking for? We're very fortunate to have with us Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, Mr. Scott Cosenza. Welcome back to the show, Scott.
Cheers, Mark. Pleasure to be here.
So, Scott, unlike you, which is surprising seeing as you are a lawyer, but I guess that's it's too much for you. I have read some John Grisham books, and I have seen the film versions of a couple of those books. And the ones that I always enjoy are the ones where you're determining who gets to go in the juries. Now, I would love to be a fly on the wall in the New York City courthouse to see what kind of questions are asked, how the people respond to those questions while they're voir direing the potential jurors, the 12 jurors and 6 potential alternates. Scott, give us a quick rundown on how that's actually going to look in real time.
Sure. Well, just the vocab voir dire, to tell the truth is the derivation of that term. And jurors are required to discuss personal details of their lives before the court in order so that the defendant it's often said now you'll hear so that the government, but really it's so that the defendant gets a fair trial. So you can't have somebody who thinks that Hillary Clinton is the sun god and who is our last great hope for humanity.
Surely that was Barack Obama for many people.
And well, either way, right? But you're in New York, so perhaps more likely to encounter with a Manhattan jury regarding Hillary, and then have them sit in judgment of Donald Trump if they think that he, stole an election that belonged to her or something like that. But then you can ask them just simply if they voted for Hillary over Donald Trump, because the vote is sort of sacrosanct, and we have a secret ballot vote in America, and you could vote for a person for any number of reasons. It doesn't indicate you would be biased against their electoral opponent in a criminal proceeding, right? So there are other things though that might be. So if you were, for instance, I don't know that it's exactly outing myself, but I am a firearms enthusiast. I'm a member of a number of gun rights organizations. I write about gun issues, often from the perspective of supporting individual rights and against gun control. And if I was going to be seated for a jury and the person was like the number one issue in their whole animating political career was gun control, I can expect it to be examined on these things that I've done and participated in that might indicate a bias in that area, and then that could spill over, for instance, into my judgment, which it's not supposed to. Let's be clear. This is all about, the jury is not supposed to use political bias to decide whether someone, to decide criminal liability in a case, and that's what we're up against here in Manhattan.
So that's an interesting prospect there, Scott, because I think that, and I believe this is the opinion of many people, they don't believe that Donald Trump can get a fair trial, what they term a fair trial, in this particular courtroom, because the jury pool would be pulled from people who, the entire jury pool reach, I think is only 12% are pro Donald Trump, but there's.
Let me just stop you right there and just give a factual point for people who don't know. The entirety of the jury will be from Manhattan.
Yes,
because that's the sort of district that the charge has been brought in. It's a state law violation that's brought by the Manhattan district attorney in Manhattan. All the jurors must be from Manhattan. They have to reach the age of majority. They have to be citizens, and they have to speak English. And those are, the sort of requirements as to who can get on the jury.
Yes. So of those people, I guess what will be looked into is not only their direct answers during voir dire, but also their social media histories, things like this, to ensure that.
Oh, yes, Mark. Yeah. I mean, if somebody says, oh, no, I never said anything bad about Donald Trump or for Donald Trump. I had a Facebook account and was active on Facebook during the 2016 presidential election. And I don't think I know any of the more than 100 other accounts that I was friends with that never posted a thing about
Mm,
Donald Trump. Now, just because you posted one thing once, that doesn't mean you are disqualified from the jury. But if everything that you posted, like I could never be on a jury sitting in judgment of Hillary Clinton. I'm hopelessly and forever biased against her and would never be able to give her a fair hearing because I believe that she's such an awful person and a liar. And so there are people for whom that's true for Donald Trump, and that their Facebook posts may reveal that. So if one meme or one joke
mm.
about his hair or something like that, that's not going to be disqualifying. But if you have a pattern and practice I mean, grousing about the government and who's president is so distinctly American. You can't say that would disqualify you. It has to be something that indicates a bias that you wouldn't be able to be fair. So whether that might be the level of vitriol
Mm.
with text that accompanied such a post, it's a holistic kind of examination. And social media statements and posts are likely to be a big part of it.
Okay, now what are some of the they have released I believe it's 42 questions that are covered
A
during
questionnaire,
during
actually,
4 day, a questionnaire.
yes. Yeah.
So what are the most interesting ones to you as a lawyer and a political watcher?
Well, I love, like picking a jury, the act of it, with the exception of not appreciating it in a Grisham movie because I think that they're so far afield from. Well, I don't want to get into it, the criticism there, but the whole thing is actually interesting to me. I listened to an interview last week with Camille Vasquez, who's the woman who was, I think, lead counsel for Johnny Depp and his famous trial against Amber Heard, which was, a civil trial, not a criminal trial. But the elements of picking a jury are kind of both the same thing, right? What do you want? Well, for most lawyers, and this was something that was taught to me back in law school and was discussed by the practitioner lawyers that we dealt with sometimes. Basically, the first thing you want to do is take away anybody who's a no for you, right?
Mm.
So forgetting about somebody who's going to be pro MAGA or want to help Donald Trump, yeah, that'd be nice. But let's first focus on who's going to kill us and not listen to the evidence just because they're so anti-Trump. There are some people. This gets into kind of a funny switch of the coin because there are jurors who basically think that just because somebody's in the dock, just because they're accused, that they are guilty. That's something that defense attorneys face very often, is that like, well, why would they even be there if they... Now, I don't know if Donald Trump has that exact same problem because of the publicity surrounding his existence and these charges, but for a regular defendant, that would be something that they would focus on. And so you just the first rule is you try to get people disqualified who are not going to help you, who are going to be a definite detriment to your client winning. So that's sort of the first rule. And then you get into the more sophisticated or nuanced, like for Trump, is it, does a small business owner, are they preferable to an employee of a large corporation? Or like, you can play games with yourself of thinking like, who's used to government regulation? Like, and for me, by the way, I didn't plan on using that as an example to set this up, but that's who I would want. Okay. In New York, if you have to deal with the New York City and state licensing authorities for any kind of business, whether it's, a hot dog stand on the corner to a securities company and anything in between, the idea that, an improper filing, because let's recall, Mark, these many felony charges that Donald Trump faces have to do with filing requirements and accounting requirements in the state law. And so anybody who's been frustrated by that, I might think, who also thinks in their own, in my own life, I've tried to be a good, hot dog stand owner, and yet I know there's probably some license I'm not in compliance with because they're difficult to understand and stay on top of.
Will Alvin Bragg make me a felon?
Right. Yeah.
So, Scott, we'll be covering this on the pages of libertynation.com. Make sure you go over there, check out his writings. It's fantastic. It's enlightening and always entertaining. Scott, thanks ever so much for being with us.
Thanks, Mark.
And that's about all we have time for on this week's special edition of Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. Thanks to our guests for taking the time to come and join us and share their expertise with us. And thank you to you at home for taking the time to listen in and be part of the conversation. LibertyNation.com, free thinking, free speech. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.